Earth's defiance. In the grand tapestry of the cosmos, the Terran Confederation stood as a beacon of unity and progress, a shining example of what humanity could achieve when united in purpose. At the helm of this proud nation was President Amara Sinclair, a leader whose unwavering resolve and fierce devotion to her people had earned her the respect and admiration of all who knew her. But even in times of peace, the specter of war loomed on the horizon. The Galactic Empire, a vast and powerful entity that had long sought to exert its dominion over the stars, had set its sights on the Terran Confederation. The Emperor, a ruthless tyrant known as Zorax, had grown weary of the Confederation's refusal to bend to his will, and now he sought to bring them to heel. The Empire's demands were clear. The Terran Confederation was to grant Imperial ships unrestricted passage through their space, ostensibly to aid in quelling a rebellion in a distant corner of the galaxy. But Sinclair knew better than to trust the word of a despot. She saw through the Emperor's thin veneer of benevolence, recognizing the demand for what it truly was, a ploy to establish a foothold in Terran space, a stepping stone to conquest and subjugation. With a heavy heart, Sinclair stood before the Terran Council, her voice ringing out with unwavering conviction. "We cannot, and will not, accede to the demands of the Galactic Empire," she declared, her eyes blazing with determination. "To do so would be to surrender our sovereignty, to invite the oppressor into our home. The Terran Confederation stands for freedom, for the right of all sentient beings to chart their own course among the stars. We will not trade our principles for the false promise of security." The council erupted in a chorus of support, their voices joining as one in solidarity with their president. But even as they celebrated their defiance, a sense of unease settled over the chamber. The Empire was not known for its tolerance of dissent, and the consequences of their refusal would be severe. As if on cue, a holographic projection of the Emperor himself flickered to life in the center of the room, his cruel visage twisted in a sneer of contempt. "You dare defy the will of the Empire," he snarled, his voice dripping with malice. "You will learn the price of your insolence, Sinclair. The Empire will have its due, one way or another." With a final, ominous glare, the projection winked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Sinclair stood tall, her resolve unshaken by the Emperor's threats. She knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril, that the Empire would stop at nothing to crush the Terran Confederation underfoot. But she also knew that her people would not go quietly into the night, that they would fight with every ounce of their being to preserve their freedom and their way of life. As the council chamber buzzed with activity, Sinclair turned to her advisors, her eyes glinting with steely determination. "We must prepare for the worst," she said, her voice steady and sure. "The Empire will not take our defiance lightly. We must be ready to defend our homes, our families, and our very existence. The Terran Confederation will stand against the tide of tyranny, no matter the cost." And so, as the specter of war loomed ever closer, the Terran Confederation steeled itself for the battles to come, united in their resolve to defend their freedom to the last. The galaxy would soon learn the true strength of the human spirit, and the lengths to which they would go to protect what they held dear. The Empire's fury. The Emperor's fury knew no bounds. Zorax, a being whose cruelty was matched only by his thirst for power, paced the halls of his palace, his rage building with every step. The Terran Confederation's defiance had not only threatened his plans for conquest, but had also dealt a blow to his pride. The Emperor was not accustomed to being denied, and he would make the humans pay dearly for their insolence. In the depths of space, the Imperial fleet gathered, a vast armada of warships bristling with weapons of unimaginable destructive power. At the center of this fearsome assembly was the Emperor's flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the mightiest of its companion vessels. From the bridge of this Titan, Zorax surveyed his forces, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "The Terran Confederation thinks itself strong," he mused, his voice dripping with contempt. "They believe that their unity and their precious principles will save them. but they have no concept of true power. They will learn, as all do, that the Empire's might is absolute. With a wave of his hand, the Emperor set his armada in motion, the ships surging forward like a pack of ravenous beasts, their engines roaring with the promise of destruction. They made their way to the border of Terran space, a line that the Emperor had long sought to cross, and now, with the full might of the indomitable spirit, continued. Thorn knew that it was the only chance they had. As the Admiral's ship closed in on the Imperial flagship, the Emperor's guards moved to intercept, their own ships forming a wall of steel and fire around their leader. But Thorn was undeterred, his eyes narrowed in concentration as he guided his ship through the maelstrom of enemy fire. With a final, desperate push, Thorn's ship broke through the Imperial defenses and came face to face with the flagship itself. The Admiral wasted no time, leaping from his own vessel and onto the hull of the enemy ship, his battle suit's thrusters flaring as he sought to find a way inside. The Emperor's guards were quick to respond, their own battle suits bristling with weapons as they moved to intercept the intruder. But Thorn was a skilled combatant, his movements fluid and precise as he fought his way through the enemy ranks, his eyes fixed on his ultimate goal, the Emperor himself. As Thorn battled his way towards the bridge of the flagship, Dr. Lena Vasari's superweapon was nearing completion. The scientist and her team had worked tirelessly to bring the device online, pouring every ounce of their skill and knowledge into its construction. They knew that the weapon represented the Terran Confederation's last, best hope for victory, and they were determined to see it through to the end. With a final, triumphant cry, Vasari activated the weapon, its immense power core thrumming to life as it prepared to unleash its fury upon the Imperial fleet. The scientist knew that the device would need time to charge, to build up the energy it needed to strike a decisive blow, and she could only hope that Thorn and the rest of the Terran forces could hold out long enough for it to do its work. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Emperor watched the battle unfold with a sense of growing unease. He had underestimated the humans, had believed that their resistance would crumble in the face of his overwhelming might. But now, as he saw the Terran ships continue to fight, their crews driven by a spirit of defiance that seemed unbreakable, he began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. And then, the doors to the bridge burst open, and Admiral Thorn strode in, his battle suit battered and scarred, but his eyes burning with a fierce determination. The Emperor rose to meet him, his own battle suit gleaming in the half-light of the bridge, and the two leaders faced each other, each knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "You have fought well, human," the Emperor said, his voice cold and mocking. "But you cannot hope to defeat me. I am the ruler of the Galactic Empire, and my power is absolute." But Thorn only smiled, his eyes glinting with a fierce, unyielding resolve. "You underestimate us, Emperor," he said, his voice steady and sure. "You underestimate the strength of the human spirit, the depths of our determination. We will never yield to you, or to anyone who seeks to take our freedom." With those words, the two leaders clashed, their battle suits flaring with energy as they fought, each determined to emerge victorious. And high above, in the depths of space, Dr. Vasari's superweapon finally reached full power, its immense energy beam lancing out towards the Imperial fleet, ready to strike the decisive blow that would turn the tide of the war once and for all. Unbroken resolve. As the superweapon's energy beam tore through the void of space, the Imperial fleet was consumed in a blinding flash of light. Ships that had once seemed invincible were reduced to molten slag in an instant, their crews vaporized before they even had a chance to scream. The Emperor's flagship, caught in the epicenter of the blast, was torn apart like a piece of paper, its once mighty hull shattering into a million pieces. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Thorn and the Emperor were locked in a desperate struggle, their battle suits straining as they sought to overpower one another. But as the ship began to break apart around them, the Emperor's resolve finally faltered, his eyes widening in fear and disbelief as he realized that his empire was crumbling before his very eyes. With a final, desperate lunge, Thorn struck the Emperor down, his battle suit's energy blade slicing through the tyrant's armor like a hot knife through butter. The Emperor fell to the deck, his life's blood pooling around him as he gasped his last bitter breaths. And then, with a final, shuddering groan, the flagship itself began to disintegrate, its structure no longer able to withstand the immense forces tearing it apart. Thorn, his suit battered and his body aching with fatigue, barely managed to escape before the ship exploded, the shockwave sending him tumbling through the void of space. Back on Earth, President Amara Sinclair addressed the people of the Terran Confederation, her voice ringing out with unwavering conviction. "My fellow citizens," she began, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination, "the Empire seeks to crush us beneath their heel, to strip us of our freedom and our dignity. But we will not let them. We will fight with every ounce of our strength, with every fiber of our being. We will show the galaxy that the human spirit is unbreakable, that we will never surrender our right to chart our own course among the stars." As Sinclair's words echoed across the airwaves, the people of the Terran Confederation rallied behind their leader, their hearts swelling with pride and determination. They knew that the road ahead would be hard, that the battles to come would test them in ways they had never been tested before. But they also knew that they would face these challenges as one, united in their resolve to defend their home and their way of life. And so, as the Imperial fleet closed in, the Terran Confederation braced itself for the fight of its life, ready to unleash the full might of human ingenuity and courage against the forces of tyranny and oppression. The galaxy would soon learn the true strength of the human spirit and the lengths to which they would go to protect what they held dear. The tides of war. The first blow came without warning, a searing lance of energy that sliced through the void of space and slammed into the shields of the TCS Indomitable. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Nolan Thorn gritted his teeth as the deck shuddered beneath his feet, the ship's systems straining to absorb the impact of the Imperial weapon. "Return fire," Thorn bellowed, his voice cutting through the chaos of the bridge like a knife. "All ships, engage the enemy." The Terran Defense Fleet sprang into action, its ships moving with a precision and grace that belied their size and power. They darted and weaved through the Imperial formation, their weapons flashing as they sought to exploit the weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. But the Empire's ships were not so easily overcome. Their hulls bristled with weapons of immense destructive power, and their crews were well-trained and fiercely loyal to their Emperor. They'd met the Terran assault with a fury of their own, their guns blazing as they sought to overwhelm the human fleet through sheer force of numbers. For a time, it seemed as though the Terrans might be able to hold their own, their superior tactics and innovative technology, allowing them to stay one step ahead of the Imperial onslaught. But as the battle wore on, the sheer weight of the Empire's numbers began to tell, and the Terran ships found themselves being pushed back, slowly but inexorably, towards their own borders. On the planet below, Dr. Lena Vasari and her team worked feverishly to complete their weapon, the device that they hoped would turn the tide of the war in the Terrans' favor. They had been racing against the clock for weeks, pouring every ounce of their skill and knowledge into the project, and now, with the fate of their civilization hanging in the balance, they knew that they had no choice but to succeed. "We're almost there," Vasari said, her voice tight with tension as she made a final adjustment to the weapon's power core. "Just a few more minutes." But even as she spoke, a terrible realization dawned on the scientists. The Imperial fleet, having sensed the importance of their work, had broken off from the main battle and was now bearing down on their location, determined to destroy the weapon before it could be brought to bear against them. "They're coming," one of the scientists cried, his voice trembling with fear. "We have to evacuate." But Vasari shook her head, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "No," she said, her voice steady and unyielding. "We finish this. We give the fleet the chance it needs to turn the tide. We do not run." And so, as the Imperial ships closed in, their weapons primed and ready to fire. Vasari and her team stood their ground, pouring every last ounce of their skill and dedication into the completion of their weapon. They knew that they might not survive the coming onslaught, but they also knew that their sacrifice would not be in vain, that their work would give the Terran Confederation the chance it needed to survive. High above, the tide of the battle began to turn, as Vasari's weapon finally came online. It was a thing of terrible beauty, a device that harnessed the fundamental forces of the universe and turned them into a weapon of unimaginable power. The Terran ships, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they now had a fighting chance, redoubled their efforts, their weapons tearing through the Imperial fleet with a savage fury. Empire at his back, he would not be denied. As the Imperial ships drew near, the Terran defense fleet mobilized to meet them. Leading the charge was Admiral Nolan Thorne, a brilliant tactician whose cunning and bravery had earned him a place in the annals of Terran military history. Thorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, the TCS Indomitable, his eyes narrowed as he surveyed the approaching enemy. "The Empire seeks to test our resolve," he said, his voice steady and sure. "They believe that their numbers and their firepower will be enough to break us, but they underestimate the strength of the human spirit, the depths of our determination. We will not yield, not to the Empire, not to anyone." As the two fleets drew ever closer, President Sinclair made one final attempt at diplomacy. She opened a channel to the Imperial flagship, her image appearing on the viewscreen before the Emperor himself. "Emperor Zorax," she began, her voice calm and measured, "I implore you to reconsider this course of action. War will only bring suffering and destruction to both our peoples. There is still time to find a peaceful resolution, to work together for the betterment of all." But the Emperor only laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the communications link. "You speak of peace, Sinclair, but you do not comprehend the nature of power. The strong do as they will, and the weak suffer what they must. The Empire will have its way, and your pitiful confederation will either submit or be crushed beneath our heel." With a final, dismissive gesture, Zorax severed the link, his image winking out and leaving Sinclair staring at a blank screen. The President sighed, her shoulders slumping beneath the weight of the burden she carried. She knew that there would be no turning back, that the die had been cast. The Terran Confederation would have to fight for its very survival, and she could only hope that the strength and ingenuity of her people would be enough to see them through the dark times ahead. As the Imperial Armada bore down on the Terran defense fleet, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see who would emerge victorious in this clash of titans. The fate of the Terran Confederation, and indeed the future of all humanity, hung in the balance, and the outcome of this battle would echo through the ages. Ingenuity's edge. Faced with the overwhelming might of the Galactic Empire, the Terran Confederation knew that their only hope lay in their technological prowess and innovative spirit. While the Empire relied on brute force and sheer numbers, the humans had always prided themselves on their ability to adapt, to find creative solutions to even the most daunting of challenges. At the forefront of this effort was Dr. Lena Vasari, a brilliant scientist whose groundbreaking work in the fields of energy weapons and advanced propulsion had earned her a reputation as one of the greatest minds of her generation. As the Imperial fleet bore down on the Terran Confederation, Vasari and her team worked tirelessly to complete their latest project, a revolutionary weapon system that could turn the tide of the war. "We're running out of time," Vasari muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration as she pored over a complex set of schematics. "The Empire's ships are closing in, and if we don't have this weapon ready..." She trailed off, letting the unspoken implications hang in the air. Her team redoubled their efforts, working around the clock to overcome the final hurdles that stood between them and the completion of their masterpiece. As Vasari and her team raced against the clock, Admiral Nolan Thorne was busy devising a battle strategy that would allow the Terran defense fleet to stand against the Imperial Armada. Thorne knew that the Empire's ships were more numerous and more heavily armed than his own, but he also knew that the Terrans had an advantage in the form of their superior tactics and their unwavering determination. "We may not have the Empire's numbers," Thorne said, his eyes glinting with a fierce, unyielding resolve, "but we have something they lack: the courage and ingenuity of the human spirit. We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We will stand, and we will show the galaxy what it means to be human." Inspired by Thorne's words, the Terran Defense Fleet prepared for battle, each ship and each crew member ready to give their all in defense of their home and their way of life. They knew that the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew that they had no choice but to fight, to stand against the tide of tyranny that threatened to engulf them all.